Okay, everybody, third time's the charm. Hank Linderman here. Make sure the mic is working. Okay, great. Sorry about that. I had a couple of kerfuffles there, and I apologize. I'm Hank Linderman. I'm broadcasting to you from lovely Falls of Rough, Kentucky. And if you don't already know, I'm the Democratic nominee for Congress here in Kentucky's 2nd District. This is a rural district, and that's why I'm showing you the contract for rural and working America, because I believe that Democrats not really paying attention to rural America is why we've got President Trump. And so I've put together that group of, hey Barbara, that group of aspirational goals for us to work towards. And as you can see, it's a beautiful day. Hi, Dennis. I'm glad you're here. Hi, Barbara. Once again, apologies for being late. It's there's so much going on today, and this is Getting Angry. We call it that. And we, hi, Mark Bookin. How are you? Good to see a friend from California there. We call it Getting Angry, and Mark Andes is here as well. We call it Getting Angry, but really what it is learning how to focus our anger and do the right thing, and using our anger as our fuel to build up our determination to do the right thing. Now, here in Kentucky, we've got a primary coming up. So if you're in Kentucky, you need to vote next Tuesday, the 23rd. So it's a very, very important election. You've got several great candidates. Hey, Barbara. Several great candidates running. By the way, I won't be on the ballot. If you're looking for my name on the ballots, because I have already secured the nomination. So I will be, I'll be the nominee on the ballot. Hi, Mary. Glad you're here. There's so much to talk about today. So let's start with the numbers. This is from yesterday, and I don't love this site so much anymore. This is worldometers.org. But what it shows me just kind of is about all it can show you is how the wind blows. And our deaths are jumping right back up. 849 deaths yesterday, 25,450 new cases in the United States yesterday. Now, the hot spot appears to be Florida, and so I'm going to show you another chart. I found this at nakedcapitalism.com. The actual chart is from Johns Hopkins, and if you go to Naked Capitalism, you'll be able to find this. But the big headline here is, look at what Florida is doing. And they are really going through some difficulties. In fact, look at this. This was a headline from a Florida paper, a Florida website. The governor says 260 Orlando airport workers have tested positive for COVID-19. Now, they say that's not quite. There's some detail in that. So we'll look at it real quickly. The Department of Health gave some more detail. It includes people who worked at the airport and also people they had been in contact. So it's not 260 people that are all employees at the airport. In fact, I think the breakdown is here. 132 employees tested positive and another 128 not associated with the airport. This is why it's important to read the details. Oh my goodness. I wish I'd had the camera on because a hawk just flew right past me. Do you remember when I showed you a picture of what I thought might be an eagle? It's actually a hawk, and the hawk family has kind of taken over here, and one of them just buzzed me. So I don't know if he's angry with me or not, but he was calling the whole way. If you hear that noise, that's a hawk. I was down towards the water and walking near the brush and interrupted. The hawk had caught some sort of small animal and was having dinner, so that was fun. Anyway, let's get back to our daily thing. Florida really is in the news, and I'm going to give a plug to a conservative website, and this is The Bulwark. There are two conservative websites that I read a lot. And one of them is called The American Conservative. Yes, Barbara, you're correct. The hawk is getting angry at me. But the other one is The Bulwark. And you won't be able to just click on this site and read it. They want your email. And then they'll send you these emails. And they're about the best emails I get. I'm a progressive, and I really enjoy reading what they say. I might disagree with them here or there, but overall, they're pretty sharp. And anyway, I really enjoy this website. They are predicting that Joe Biden will select Val Demings, who's a congresswoman from Florida, that she's the smart money for Biden's VP. And kind of what they're saying is that she doesn't have a huge history. She's a former police officer, and so she's got a great career in public service, but she doesn't have as much public service record that's out there, say, as Amy Klobuchar and Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is also considered to be way up on the the leaderboard, I guess, to be chosen as vice presidential nominee. So Val Demings, very interesting. I suggest you read this article, and she would certainly be a fine vice president. By the way, I'll be voting for, working for, contributing to, and doing what I can to help Joe Biden get elected. He wasn't my first choice, but I'm going to be doing that. Now, the thing I want to talk about today is this. The ruling from the Supreme Court this week. These were very, very important Supreme Court rulings. And one of the issues that I want to talk about here, the idea that Republican evangelicals signed on with Donald Trump, even though he clearly wasn't one of them, he clearly wasn't an evangelical. Was he a Christian? Is he a Christian? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But clearly the guy's personal behavior doesn't exactly match what you would think an evangelical Christian's behavior would be. But they supported him and held their noses, and one of their arguments was, but Gorsh, we got this extra Supreme Court seat. Well, then it turns out in this ruling, there were several rulings on Monday that were released, and one of them is related to LGBT rights, and saying that you can't fire someone for being gay or being bisexual or whatever. Their sexual orientation has nothing to do with whether they can be fired. And even more important than that, I believe conservatives and Christians are very concerned that they won't be able to avoid hiring someone who's LGBT. So let's have a little deeper look into this. LGBT. I apologize, I get the initials mixed up. It's going to make it harder for us to defend our religious freedom as far as an organization being to hire people of like mind, says Franklin Graham, the son of Billy Graham, by the way. In other words, he wants to only be able to hire Christians. He wants to be able to refuse employment to you because of that. This ruling will probably make that illegal. It's going to have seismic implications for religious freedom and would set off years of lawsuits for religious organizations, says Russell Moore, the president of the public policy arm of the Southern Baptist Convention. I believe that group is located in Louisville. Not positive about that. This is going to put Christians that are evangelical and very conservative in a very difficult bind. But maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that is a good thing. That's we'll see. It's very difficult for conservatives because the majority ruling came from Neil Gorsh, and they had championed him as one of their heroes for causes like abortion, and yet he wrote for the majority. So he recognized the existence of several religious freedom protections, including the First Amendment, and so on. Now, where would you think the argument would go from here? And it goes, of course, to the bathroom. I think that's what this is. Yes. Justice Samuel Alito led the dissent and wrote about the dissent, and leaves open the question about access to restrooms and locker rooms. It always seems to go to the bathrooms. Didn't that happen in I think it happened that way in North Carolina. We made a big deal about bathrooms. Well, we don't have to have huge communal bathrooms. That's maybe one way around it. Let's dig a little deeper. Forecasting a coming fight over religious liberty, Americans United for Separation of Church and State urged a unified strategy. This is a progressive group. The progressive, inclusive faith and secular communities must come together to make it clear that religious freedom is a shield that protects, not a sword that licenses discrimination. Hi, Darren. Glad you're here. And I think that's a wise point. When your religious rights are protected, that means everyone's religious rights need to be protected. We've got one more quick page, and then I'm going to get over here. Now, the Methodist Church, I wasn't able to fit this on the screen, but the Methodist Church has a proposal in front of them that may cause the Methodist Church to split into two, because they are so divided over this idea, over LGBTQ issues. So the Bishop of the United Methodist Church says this, Cynthia Fiora Harvey. Oh, wow, the Methodists have a female bishop. I believe the Episcopalians do as well. I should know that. We have faithful followers of Jesus who both stand on very opposite interpretations of LGBTQ issues. My hope is that at some point we will look at ways that do honor and respect people for all that God has called them to be and do. That's about as good a way to say that as possible. By the way, I do want to remind you again, please share these broadcasts. That really helps us get our numbers out. I couldn't put up the party emoji yet, the little party video loop, because we do have one of the videos from last Friday is 2 or 3 views short of 1,000, but once we hit 1,000, we'll set off the fireworks. So it really makes a difference. And going forward, one of the things we're going to be talking about quite a bit is the contract for rural and working America. This is the way forward. Now, there's a gentleman, and I'll post at some point, I'll post a link to the podcast that I heard. It's a guy named Thomas Frank. And Thomas Frank has written several books that you may have heard of. One is called The Wrecking Crew, and it's about how Republicans kind of moved in and took over state legislatures. His next book was What's Wrong with Kansas, and that was a very specific one when Kansas was able to get the governors, Republicans were able to get the legislature and the governor, and what happened in Kansas. And it was pretty disastrous, and Kansas, by the way, has come back from that ledge. His other big book was called Listen Liberal, and one of my favorites is one that he did called Countdown to Oblivion. Well, he did an interview on a podcast called This Is Hell that, honestly, I listen to every few weeks because it's such a wonderful guy. His basic concept is that Republicans are able to get away with what we call fake populism. They promise all kinds of things. Yes, they talk about the 4Gs, God, guns, gays, and gynecology, but they claim to be populist, but they don't actually deliver on any of this populism. And by not delivering, they kind of get away with that. But it's kind of Democrats' fault, because Democrats have not offered a cohesive, credible populist response. You know, how do we help people that live in rural America? How do we help people that work? And bear in mind, Democrats used to be the party that stood up for working people. We stopped doing that in the 90s. We stopped being the party that stood up for people who work. We also used to be the party that kept Wall Street in line. Now neither party keeps Wall Street in line. So that is why areas that were traditionally Democratic, like the 2nd District here in Kentucky, became Republican. In fact, technically the 2nd District has more Democrats registered, but a lot of them are people that used to be Democrats and just didn't bother to change their registration. So finding a way to address the problems of rural America. I'm going to go back to the contract really quickly. You know, these are kitchen table issues. Healthcare, which by the way affects all of us in America. Healthcare is a disaster. Education and childcare. I believe we should have childcare that begins very early, that, you know, for working parents, they've got a place that they could take kids. This would be a federal program connected to our public schools. That you could go to work and have a safe place to leave your child. And also, by the way, that would be a jobs program for people who need work, especially in places like rural America. So this goes on. Hi, Roy. How are you doing? Glad you're here. This goes on and on. These are ways that we can restore and rebuild rural America to make this a place you can do more than simply survive, a place that you can thrive. And I've got to tell you, having lived in a lot of places in the country, there is nothing like rural Kentucky. There is no comparing the level of peace that I can feel here, living here, compared to other places that I've lived. And those of you that live in other places that you feel maybe a little bit too much of the rat race or too intense or whatever, a place like rural Kentucky is a wonderful place to retire to. It's just wonderful. Anyway, I've gone on and on about this too much. Thank you all for being here. Please share the broadcast, and we'll see you back here tomorrow at 3:30 Central, 4:30 Eastern. If there are any things you want me to talk about, of course, make comments and send me your thoughts. We do need your support, of course, by every time you share. That really helps the cause. If you're able to go to the website and make a little contribution, that helps as well. Don't forget to vote if you're in Kentucky next Tuesday. All right. I'm going to give you all a beautiful site to look at. This is my backyard. So get a look at that, and I will see you all tomorrow. You know I love you, and thanks for being here. Take care.